Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. I have to get your opinion on it because you actually come from both worlds and have an understanding of what it's like for someone in MMA to have to perfect the sweet science and fight the best fighter of our generation, at the very least. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that, even if you don't think he's, you know, one of the best ever. That's got to be hard, no?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's funny. I was having a talk with my coach Angelo and one of my good friends Matt Del Rosa, and we were having like some tacos and we were talking about it. And Matt made a really good point. He says, you know, boxing, it's not the hurt business, it's the ICU business. And I'm like, yeah, I could see Conor McGregor going to the ICU because just, you know, fighting. They'll say fighting is fighting, but when it comes down to the sport aspect of it, man, boxing's brutal. It's different. It's a different pace. You know, people will say, oh, it's a lot easier because it's only 3 minutes. I'm like, do you even understand what you're saying? 3 minutes, like, like the speed alone and trying to keep that intensity up for a 36-minute fight, I mean, not only, like, you got to at least be in shape. And if you can't even be in shape for that, you can't even play the game mentally. And I feel like that's where Floyd's at. And he's been there for such a long time. And for me, I'm like really, you know, shooting for Floyd to just knock Conor McGregor out. Because I feel like, you know, for him to jump into sport and for Floyd to accomplish all the things that he has, and he's still not getting any respect, I feel like, I don't know, like as a fighter, I feel like, you know, F you know, you have no idea. Boxing's a crazy business. To even succeed and do all the things that Floyd did in it, I mean, you got to give out your props. If anything, he's at least giving you a layout for future boxers to follow in terms of how to be safe and at the same time get paid and come out of it where you're not, you know, going to be in a lot of mental, you know, where you would get a lot of mental damage.
Right.
And so I don't know, you know, like emotionally, that's where I stand with it. I would love to see Floyd just kind of wipe the floor off of Conor. And I have a lot of respect for Conor. He's a phenomenal fighter, don't get me wrong. But just, I kind of feel like the hype really got to his head and he's believing it. And when he started saying, you know, hey, Floyd, you know, you've gotten so cocky, I'm like, are you kidding me? You should be saying thank you to Floyd.
Wow.
You're getting that paycheck because of Floyd. You know how many people wish they were getting that in such a short amount of time that you put in MMA versus like a whole career that Floyd did? And I'm like, I don't know. If anything, it's a spectacle and I'm excited about it. A lot of people are excited about it. But what I'm more pumped up about is that this is like a great opportunity for people to get educated about boxing. I remember there was a culture, like my 86-year-old grandma, I could sit down and talk to her. She's Filipino. She's a Filipino coming from the Philippines, lives in San Francisco, and I could sit there talking about boxing. Like she'll tell me, oh, this is Muhammad Ali's style. You gotta fight like this. You gotta do this. I mean, but versus now, like I'll talk to some 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-old, 50-year-old guys, male or female, and they don't know a thing about boxing. You know, I'm like, boxing used to be such a big part of the American culture. You know, I would love to see that actually thrive back here in the States, just for the just for not only the physical aspect of it, but also with the strategy behind it. I mean, it used to be a language. You know what I mean? So I'm sorry, I'm like rambling.
No,
and
you're
stuff
not.
Like
this is good stuff. This is good stuff. You're educating. You're educating.
I don't know. It's but yeah, like I mean, Conor. You know, I'm sure he's gonna come in there. He'll be in phenomenal shape. I'd say his best bet is to just try and cover up and or just kind of like stall time. You know, just trying to step away and not trying to use a lot of his punches and see if he can be explosive with a shot, which he won't be able to understand. I mean, if he's thinking about it's all hands, I'm like, dude, you are so far behind. Where a lot of, I can talk to an 8-year-old boxer right now who's training, who has better discipline than you, because they don't talk. They shadow box, they do their mitt work, they do their bad work, then they shadow box again, all in their head, because they're thinking about position, you know what I mean? And then you have someone like Conor saying the stuff that he's saying, and just because he found success of the boxing lines in MMA against people who are not boxers, it's false confidence. False confidence, especially with 4-ounce gloves. Now I'm thinking, okay, he's able to, like, you know, TKO some of these fighters like Aldo and let's see, who's the other guy? Eddie Alvarez. You know, and some of these other guys. But I know for true power, especially if you're a boxer, if I were to ask, like, let's say if it was even like a Canelo or a Triple G, you give them 4 rounds of gloves, man, people are going to sleep. It's not TKO. It's like out. It's just off of raw power, just off of raw technique, something that they train. It's the art. It's the art of hand. You know, the art of just punching. And you know, people are just to be blown away. In my opinion, they're just going to be like, wow. I haven't seen that. Last time I saw that was, I don't know. you know what I mean? So if anything, I'm just excited about people being a lot more educated about it, because I remember just even like a month ago, people were saying, oh, I don't know who's gonna win. I think McGregor might have a chance, and then here we are. They're like, oh, I think Floyd's gonna, you know, wipe the floor off of this guy. I'm like, didn't you just say you thought Conor McGregor's gonna win? You know, and I think people are starting to do a little more research. They're starting to understand that it's a different game, and it's a lot. It has a lot more to do than just hands alone.
Right. You know, I think that's the irony about this fight, is that because of the lack of education, that's why this fight is happening, because so many people think that this guy can come from MMA with the success he's had against guys who, you know, have not been trying to perfect this one skill since they were 6, 7, 8 years old. He's going to come over into boxing and just mop the floor with Floyd. Like, it's hard for me to believe it. I mean, Floyd's been in the ring with guys like Oscar, Miguel Cotto, Manny Pacquiao, guys that have been perfecting the art of throwing hands. That's it. They haven't been working on jiu-jitsu. They haven't been working on wrestling. They haven't been working. The only thing they've been working on are their hands since they were 8 years old, and they haven't been able to do anything to Floyd.
Pure mastery, yeah.
That's like, to me, it's like, how can you even give Conor McGregor any kind of shot in this fight? I mean, that's how good his mouth is.
Yeah. Because
he's convinced so many people. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's convinced them with, you know, he's backed up everything that he said inside the cage, so you can't knock that. But again, I think that speaks to the lack of education in, you know, the art of boxing versus, you know, what they're doing in martial arts with striking. But having said that, when you look at Conor's striking inside the cage, like, can you assess where he's at as far as how his striking would be inside the ring? Like, can you kind of rate that a little bit?
I think where Conor's at over MMA fighters is that he understands how to roll with the punches. With that said, is if his opponent were to engage with like a jab or a simple 1-2 or whatever combination that they're gonna do, Conor, even though if he may even get hit with one, not a flush shot, he knows how to come right back. He's not afraid to get hit. Like, it's up to that point. Where I think Conor will have a problem is, in MMA, Conor can hide away from that type of exchange because of the kicking, because of the grappling, and so forth. In boxing, it's right in front of you the entire time. So you are forced to have, you know, you're forced to have exceptional technique. So if you don't have technique and it's not coming out for you, you're gonna mentally drown, if that makes any sense.
No, totally. The pressure of the constant. I mean, this is all you have to defend yourself, basically.
So if you only know, like, I don't know, like 10 combinations, and if I say 10, some people think, oh, that's a lot of combination, when it's really not.
Right.
I mean, there's just layers and layers and layers of just punch combination, and that's not even including the defensive aspect of it. And there's all kinds of defense, whether it's footwork, how you're gonna step with your feet, whether it's like half step, full step, angle out, angle this way, going in through and under. There's so many different ways, and it's not where it's like a front run where you go through one exchange, boom, and then you start over. No, they're like, if you're gonna talk about someone like Floyd, he'll be like 10 steps ahead of you because he's just seen it so many times, and people will try to figure out, okay, what's this chain of sequences that Floyd is doing? Why can't I figure it out? And that's where people are trying to, you know, they're trying to exploit. Hasn't been done yet. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. Conor, I think, I don't know, like, emotionally, and again, I have a lot of respect for him for a lot of stuff that he does. He works hard, he trains really hard, he's had a lot of success in MMA, but when it comes into boxing, I was like, man, slow your roll. It's not even the same thing. Just from
a martial artist point of view, I mean, I took Taekwondo when I was a kid, a long time ago. I'm actually a black belt. I have a black belt in Taekwondo.
Traditional style, Olympic style?
Yeah, no traditional style.
That's
yeah,
sick.
yeah. Actually,
That's
my master was from South Korea.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. It was God, that's old school. Don't get me started on that. But yeah,
you got leg strength, man.
I do, just a little bit,
I'm sure that translated into your boxing. You got that footwork.
Yeah, no doubt. But just remembering back to those days, respect was very, very important, and it's very, very important in all the different disciplines in martial arts.
Yeah.
At least that's the impression I always get. So when you see someone like Conor kind of disrespect, it's not so much about disrespecting Floyd, but disrespecting the science.
Yeah.
You know, the sweet science. I mean, I'll give you an example. I know they brought in, Paulie Malignaggi, and I know you talked to Paulie. He's been around you and everything, and obviously you know everything that happened. It seemed like if it were me and I had someone like a Paulie Malignaggi come into my camp, he's got a lot of knowledge up here.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of knowledge up here, and I would do everything I could to try and learn from him. Again, I'm not saying you're going to make me a better boxer.
Right.
You're not going to teach me everything there is to know, and I'm going to come out and be competitive. But there's certain things, certain little nuances that you could pick up from Paulie, just little things. You could pick his brain. It seemed like they weren't even interested in that. And from what I heard, somebody actually told me that they didn't even bother. I mean, I know they have, striking coaches, but I don't think they have anyone who's, really solid in boxing, like a boxing trainer. Just helping them out, helping them out with some of that stuff. When you see something like that, do you look at that and say, gosh, man, this guy is really, really disrespecting this discipline? Because boxing is just another discipline of martial arts. And to me, that's just kind of crazy when I know respect is something that's very, very, very important,
Oh no, big time, man. You're gonna roll deep with me here. So no, I totally agree with you. Like with martial arts, you want to be able to just give out respect, right? I remember as soon as I got into a boxing gym, like Wildcard, for instance. I mean, it was like open season. You're constantly attacked. So in order to get respect, you have to gain it. You have to earn it. You know what I mean? So in that respect, I got to give it up to Conor to understand that this is it's a deadly art. I mean, if you look at the history of boxing, I'm going on a tangent here.
No, you're not. This is good stuff. This is educating. This is educating.
Boxing is so brutal, but it's so spectacular. Like throughout time, there are times where it's like Caesar's Palace, like the whole European phase. I won't get into the complete details of it because I have to refreshen up to it. But I remember that it would draw so much attention and people would get so involved because they like just people just throwing punches, and it came to a point where it actually evolved. It started as MMA where you would throw punches, you could choke them, you can sweep them, you can gouge their eyes, and throughout time they eventually like solidified it to where you could only use your two fists. And then during that process, boxing eventually got banished because it was just so brutal. People just couldn't handle it anymore, and it didn't start to have its resurgence up until they did it back over in England, and they started having these fights, and here we are today talking about boxing. But the respect value, it's like, so I gotta compliment Conor for having that. He has the right attitude, but the way that he's approaching it in this sport, in order for him to be a better fighter, it's not matching up. So his background is Ireland. He's an Irish guy, right? One of the most prolific fighters coming out from Ireland is Barry McGuigan. When Barry McGuigan would fight for his world titles, peace would happen in Ireland because they were always constantly in war, right? A lot of civil war. So can you imagine that? And I would imagine, because I'm Filipino, and a lot of people would look up to Manny Pacquiao. Whenever Manny Pacquiao would fight in the streets of the Philippines, people would just stop. They would stop and watch this fight. Peace would actually be up for that night. And so with that said, like I can understand that. But with that said, I also know that there's always going to be a reverence to that. you know, because he represents not only his fighting abilities, he represents our culture. So with that said, I start to and to see how Conor is approaching this whole boxing thing, and for him to not even understand that Ireland has a prolific history of boxing, and for him to not even acknowledge that, I start to question his character. I'm like, are you really Irish? You know, it's like, where's your respect value? You're telling me that you're so young, or you're so ignorant that even your parents weren't even telling you about how someone like Barry McGuigan, like, just somehow helped the culture and the community and the whole country of Ireland. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like, there's so many things that's out there that I don't agree with it. And again, I'm not always on the inside, so I don't know everything. But at the same time too, you know, it's like, you know, just slow your roll. You know, I just can't wait for Floyd to basically just toss him up and just kind of school him and just kind of show the world, it's like, hey, you know what, you guys need to know boxing is not MMA. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
So do you have an official predict, like, if you could picture, I know you already mentioned a knockout potentially, but if you're thinking a knockout, is there a particular way? Like, do you think the corner will stop it? Do you think it'll be a clean knockout, headshot, body shot? Like, is there anything that you've seen in Conor where you're like, oh man, I'd expose that?
I don't think Conor's corner is going to stop it at all, just knowing that they don't have the background of boxing. They don't understand what a fighter goes through. So if Conor is taking all this punishment, let's say it's round 12, and he's looking really bad, they're not going to go and try and save him. Because of what Floyd can potentially do to Conor McGregor, it can change Conor McGregor. Not only his confidence, his emotion, his spirit. Will he be the same afterwards? Like, I'm not sure if everyone who Floyd has fought, if those fighters have been the same after they fought Floyd. You know what I mean? So this whole idea of taking the spirit away, in my heart, I don't believe his team understands that idea. And this is where I'm saying, man, boxing is so deep that it consumes you, you know, and people who are involved in boxing, they understand this idea, you know what I mean? And which is why I'm so excited for people to actually understand the sport of boxing, because it takes that much out of you. And again, I'm not trying to disrespect all the other arts and all the other sports. I'm just saying this is just the sport of boxing.
Right.
So anyway, with my prediction, I kind of, like, I'm hoping for, it's a little bit emotional too, on top of being technical, is I'm looking for Floyd to actually stopping him in the later rounds. I think realistically it'll be maybe 11 or 12, to where I think Floyd will carry out Conor, and when he sees Conor just basically just give up, just finish him off like Floyd did against Endu. A couple of straight backhands over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an old school fight. You remember that one?
Of course I do. Yeah, he hit him like with 3 or 4 right hands in a row. Pop, pop, pop. I said, wow. Yeah, no, that's vintage.
It's like he was like drilling the nail with a hammer.
Right. That's crazy. That's crazy. You know, you mentioned the words "give up." If you look at Conor's 2 fights with Nate Diaz, I mean, obviously the first one he got choked out, but you know, they had some good back and forth exchanges on their feet, and then all of a sudden he shot in, which was weird to me, because why would you shoot in on Nate Diaz? Like, that's ridiculous. But he did. And some people have been kind of critical. They kind of say he gave him his neck knowing that he was going to get choked out. But even in the rematch, you know, he dropped Nate like 3, 4, maybe even 5 times. I can't remember. He dropped him. He kept getting up.
Yeah.
But by round 4 and round 5, I mean, there were times when Conor literally turned his back and did a little jog. I'm not going to say he ran, but he definitely did a little jog away from Nate, trying to stall him, buy time. When you see things like that from a fighter, do you like? Can you pick up on that? Do you look at him as someone who gives up when the going gets tough?
I mean, you know, it's different for a lot of different fighters, I guess. But I mean, I think that's something that's super telling. I remember one that just echoes in my mind is when I watched Pacquiao fight Marquez for the 4th time. Pacquiao gets dropped. I forget what round it is. And I'm thinking, wow, he's never been dropped before by Marquez.
Right.
You know, how is he going to respond? Like, I was at the edge of my seat. Manny goes right back into the fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm thinking, what the heck? Everyone's screaming. Everyone's like, ah. And I'm like, just sitting there. I'm just like intently watching. I'm like, what the hell is he going to do?
Right.
And then, you know, he goes in and everyone knows what ends up happening. I mean, Manny just drops to Floyd. He's done. But with that moment, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, that's the definition of a real fighter. Is during times of adversity, what do you do with it? Do you just step away, or do you actually get right back into the action? Another one that I actually enjoy watching was when Floyd fought against Zab Judah, and there were like in the first half of the fight, very competitive, and then you know, Zab Judah does something like, you know, hits Floyd in the groin or something like that, right?
Buy some time, basically.
Yeah. But and when I was watching it, you know, I was trying to watch Floyd's mannerism and see how, you know, how he is. He just gets right back in it. He zones in and he focuses, and he's like, it doesn't discourage him. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know, for anyone to actually experience that, whether they expect it or not, but just to know that they have the confidence in themselves to just step right back in and just play it, you know, fair game. I mean, you know, that's, to me, that's something magical. For Conor to do what he did, I mean, as a fighter, I mean, you just don't. You know what I mean? I mean, like, when I get in there, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm gonna go through if I'm gonna get hit with a good shot, and I'm like, oh shit, you know, it's like, you know, I'm like, you know, fuck that, I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction of knowing that you got me. I don't know, like, I think boxing just kind of naturally, organically builds that within a fighter, whether you're an A-level fighter or even if you're just a journeyman. You know what I mean? Because of the intensity of it, and I think that's also one of the reasons why I feel like Conor is gonna be in for a rude awakening, because in the square circle, or whatever people want to call it in boxing, you can't hide. You have to face your fears. You know what I mean? Especially when you're at your weakest point, you're staying on your feet, everything's delayed, you throw out a punch and it's not, you know, the synapses isn't going as quickly as you were in the first round. You have to acknowledge that you're being exposed. But even though you're being exposed at your weakest point, you're feeling your mortality. You got to go in there and you got to go zone in, and you got to go back to your roots. It's like, no, fuck that. I'm a fighter. You know, I'm gonna bring it out. You know, and I feel like sometimes in MMA you're able to hide through it just from a simple tap. Now I'm not saying that you shouldn't tap.
Right.
You can break an arm.
Of course.
You know, you can get really jacked up.
Right.
But I'm just saying, just from those examples that you brought up about Conor. I mean, those are telling things that I think, as a fighter, you know, that can be easily exploited with the right person. Yeah.
Just one last question on the subject, just because
Sorry,
you're doing some good educating. Otherwise, I wouldn't keep asking questions. You know, you mentioned, and you're not the first person that said this to me. I've talked to other fighters who are in boxing and in MMA, trainers and stuff like that. Everybody kind of talks about how punishing and brutal boxing is compared to MMA. I mean, don't get me wrong. MMA is a brutal sport. It's nasty. Limbs can get broken and stuff like that. But they always come back to boxing and say it's more punishing because it's just so many punches over and over and over again, and that can do more damage. Having said that, is this fight, like, again, don't get me wrong, every fight's dangerous, but is this fight really, really dangerous to Conor McGregor if he does not know how to defend himself from, you know, an onslaught potentially coming from, like I said, definitely the best fighter of our generation?
And I mean, like you said, anything can happen, but I'll say this, in MMA, no one has ever died. In boxing, there's people who have died. You have fighters out there who give out their best. The evolution of boxing, like the way boxing is right now, a lot of that was because of all of the sacrifices that has been done over the past 1,000 years. You know what I mean? So for the refinement that Floyd Mayweather has, he's an example of our time right now. That is from generations and generations of people who have just fought with the same idea, the same spirit of just knowing that I'm going to fight to the death. With my only two hands, you know, no breaks. It's just you and me. It's one-on-one. And because of that, people have died. Because of, you know, like you were saying, it's all the trauma and stuff like that. I mean, think about it. Like, they say there's no 8 counts in MMA. It's like, you know, rightfully so, but they will stop it right away as soon as they see someone getting hurt. Versus in boxing, let's say it's the 6th round of a world title fight and you're getting punished. Your opponent hits you and their percentage rate is like 60%. It's huge, but for whatever reason, you're able to hold up. Let's say you have a phenomenal camp, your legs are really strong, your core is really strong, so your legs are able to hold you up, but your brain is still your brain. The only way you can exercise your brain is just by thinking about strategy, sleeping, resting, nourishing it, and stuff like that. It doesn't get any stronger, like physically strong. You can't lift weights for your brain. You know what I mean? So if you're going through the 6th round, you get dropped, but you're able to get back up, and you get an 8 count. I mean, like, really? Do you have to go through another 6 rounds of the same thing? And if your corner's not going to save you, I mean, what are you going to do? As a fighter, you have the mentality of knowing that, no, my job is to fight. My job isn't to stop. My job is to fight. So it's, yeah, it's like with that, I kind of feel like there's so many different ways to talk about that. But yeah, I just think the whole death factor is a telling one.
Yeah, no, definitely. What do you think is worse, getting hit in the head or getting hit in the body?
I mean, they both suck, but I would rather get hit in the body.
Really?
Yeah. No, there are a few times in grappling where I'll have a guy, like, you know, pretty much pick me up and just do a double leg and just slam me, boom, right against the cage. It felt like a really devastating body shot.
Wow.
I mean, it sucked. But at the same time, too, I was thinking, I could still at least think.
Yeah. This is much more important to protect.
It's like, okay, just breathe. Like, I can still cue myself into the next few steps. You know, I was like, what can I do? Versus, like, if you get hit with a really good shot, you know, you can black out for a second. You know, your vision gets a little bit blurry, and while at the same time too, you have to think about, where the heck is my balance? You know, it's like, oh snap, it's coming out fast, boom, you know, and it's a different element. Wow. Anna, this was probably the best. I've talked to a lot of people about this fight. This was probably the most in-depth and one of the best breakdowns that I've had thus far. I thank you for giving that to me, especially since it's a couple days before the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, right? You're going, right? Yeah, so I know people are going to have cameras in your face, and they're going to be asking you the same thing, so I'm glad I got an opportunity to get it first before anybody else. But let the fans know where they can keep up with you. Obviously, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. Well, first off, I appreciate even the time. You know,
no, I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
For me, it's big time, just being a female in the sport. You know, it's really nice to actually get that support, so thank you. And for anyone who wants to keep up with me, just plug in my name, Ana Julaton, AnaJulaton. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can check me out on my website, and, you know, that's it.
That's it, and we're out.